Okay, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everybody. Today is Friday, December the 10th, 2021, and we do have quite a bit of, I guess you could say, I wouldn't call it news this time around. I'd call it more like honestly a global chess game to cover, so to speak. But we're going to be covering everything from COVID all the way to what's going on around the world globally with respects to different strategical maneuvers, outputs, tactics, you name it. But let's jump right into it as per usual. I mean, the great thing is that it is Friday. Looking forward to a lot of great things coming out this weekend, for not just for the members but for the public as well. In addition to, of course, it simply just being Friday for all of us, right? So, first and foremost, a jury has found former Empire actor Jussie Smollett. Please forgive me if I butchered his name. I've never actually spoken it except for right now. Actually, guilty on 5 of 6 counts. He lied and staged a race baiting attack in Chicago. My God, how I again. This is what I mean. We got to leave it till the trial comes to fruition, and then we got to see the results. Because ultimately, how many things could we have speculated on? What if this? What if that? So to speak, leading up to this event, just like the Rittenhouse trial, just like all of it. Which is why I stand by that method of just not even trying to speculate until there's some type of conclusion of some sort, right? And then we can analyze from there. But again, talk about someone who's in desperate need of attention, right? The next thing is that 7 triple vaccinated Germans have become infected with Omicron in South Africa. 6 out of the 7 had the Pfizer BioNTech mRNA booster dose as well. You could argue that's an anecdotal example. I do appreciate that. Again, it's saying 7 people instead of only 1 or 2. Again, to play both sides of the fence here. But with that being said, there's now studies showing that there are correlations between the Omicron and Delta variant increasing in highly vaccinated areas compared to highly unvaccinated areas. So take that as you will. That's according to a Harvard study. So I don't think I should have any issue with YouTube taking me down for that. So the next thing is that Biden read a script and said, quote, end of message out loud. And he said it very slowly at the end. I wanted to bring this up just to show the sort of cognitive decline that we're seeing from the commander-in-chief of the United States of America. Not only that, but speaking of which, according to Jen Psaki, Biden's press secretary, she claims that President Biden will will veto the bill banning the federal vaccine mandates if it comes to his desk, because from my understanding, the United States Senate had voted 52 to 48 to repeal Biden's federal vaccine mandates. Senators Tester, Democrat, and Manchin, Democrat, joined all Republicans in voting yes. The bill now goes to the Democrat-controlled House. Again, the problem is with this type of political decision and all that. I understand the infrastructure of the system overall to sort of give that, that illusion of democracy and you name it. And some of you might be saying, Dave, what are you talking about? Well, again, look at what this channel is all about, right? With that being said, though, the reason I bring this up is because look at this. This is affecting people's day-to-day jobs, and it's as simple as if there's some type of, vote in the Senate and in the House, it doesn't matter because Biden's going to veto it anyways. I mean, now, to be fair as well, we also have to play the angle of if Trump was president, would he have vetoed it as well due to the pressure from Big Pharma? That's not for me to say, but we got to consider those things seriously and weigh the odds in a speculative sense, right? The next thing is that according to Putin, the conflict in eastern Ukraine looks like genocide. He said those words. Talks on peaceful settlement of Ukrainian crisis has reached an impasse, says the Russian Foreign Ministry. Again, of course, coming directly from Putin, which comes from Foreign Minister Lavrov, of course. So again, take that as you will. We'll see day by day what happens there. The next thing is that China's Evergrande Group has officially been declared in default for the first time. China's property developer Kaiser also defaulted on a $400 million debt as well. This is according to Bloomberg. Again, presuming this is accurate and true, we could see why, for example, why China might need a war, why, if this is a strategic position, if you will, why China, maybe it wasn't a strategic move, maybe it was simple, as simple as them going broke, but China's not concerned because of how much they have on the rest of the world, whether that's through covert intelligence, whether that's through the economic game they play by playing the long game, letting countries default on debts so then they take over things like airports like they've done recently. So it all depends how you view it, right? The next thing is that Omicron cases are, quote, mostly mild in Europe so far, says the European Medicine Agency, or EMA. Again, you see the the FDA is the only one that and Pfizer are the only ones that are pushing this. We got to get the next batch ready. But of course, they're the ones that generally push a lot of what goes on around the world, or at least a big chunk of what goes on in the developed world, which is, again, it leads us to the next thing about the United States being an empire more than a democratic state, if you will. But it's for a different conversation. The next thing is that Biden has ordered, preparations in case diplomacy fails as it pertains to Iran. The U.S. says it's committed to ensuring Iran doesn't obtain nuclear weapons, the White House says. Yeah, simple talking point. I think they all have it. I really do. So let's move on. The next thing is that, oh my God, here we go. A scientist was bitten twice by a lab mouse in Taiwan while running experiments on different coronavirus variants in a high-security biolab before testing positive for the virus. It is the island's first local confirmed case in over a month. Yeah, this is not good. Again, presuming this is accurate and true, I mean, for crying out loud. Speaking of crying out loud, Moderna has announced a, quote, positive interim phase 1 data, end quote, for an mRNA jab against the regular flu. You want my opinion, folks? Not to sound all negative and depraved, but or sad rather, but here we go. This is all it takes. Now you got the flu shots, all these different things. All of a sudden, this is given the exploiting this particular situation has now opened the doors for all these different, companies to say, well, you got to get this shot, you got to get that shot, That's just my opinion. I hope it doesn't go down that route, but we shall see. The next thing is that, speaking of which, by the way, I just want to say that I do believe that people fighting every day in their own way, yourself, myself, pushing for the truth like this, or at least trying to push for what we would perceive to be more of a truthful angle than what we're being told by the mainstream media. That is how we defeat this. That's my humble perspective on this, right? Through the laws, through the way that it's done, through the system, as they say, metaphorically playing while coloring in the lines. Some of you may think I have too much of a glass half full mentality, and I respect that. I understand that. The next thing is that U.S. consumer price inflation has jumped 6.8% year over year in November, the largest increase since 1982. Markets celebrate the, quote, in line with consensus, end quote, record high inflation data. U.S. stock futures are also on the rise. Again, economics. I'm not going to pretend that I'm a master economist and I can say what's good for one angle or one perspective, if this is good with consumer price inflation or, with if it's bad in other cases. So I'm just going to leave it there. The next thing is that the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled that Texas abortion providers can sue over the state's ban on most abortions, but has kept the law in place. In other words, this is a non-decision. The SCOTUS, which stands for Supreme Court of the United States, is afraid of a clear ruling on the issue. If that doesn't show that there's political influence within the Supreme Court, I don't know what does. And talking about political influence, remember Ghislaine Maxwell, hanging out on Epstein's Island, if I'm not mistaken, with, what was his name there? Justice Roberts. Take that as you will, folks. The next thing is that Facebook asserts its, quote, fact checks are created by third-party organizations and used to remove content or to suspend users are nothing more than, quote, protected opinions in a court filing. Whoa, that's big. Protected opinions. You have to, again, assuming going by the system, because these elites never usually do. I'm surprised they even colored in the lines, meaning like, they played by the rules here by admitting that in court. But wow, are nothing more than protected opinions in a court filing. Wow. Just like how the mainstream media, like how if a CNN anchor claims something ridiculous, what'll happen is if it ever goes to court to sue for defamation, libel, slander, what ends up happening? The media company just argues that their employee, their presenter, is playing a character, and no one takes them seriously. That's what happened with Rachel Maddow on MSNBC. So the next thing is that New York Governor Hochul imposes a statewide indoor mask mandate and imposes also a $1,000 fine for each violation. Again, you know where I stand on how to fight this. Not in a physical sense. I'm not advocating for violence at all. So you know what I mean. The next thing is that Omicron is projected to become the dominant variant in England by mid-December, claims the Health Security Agency as of today. I'm leaving that there. Okay, now we're going to go to some more global coverage. The next thing is that Saudi rights activist Loujain al-Hathloul has sued ex-U.S. contractors. This U.S. lawsuit accuses 3 former U.S. contractors of helping hack al-Hathloul's phone, leading to arrest and imprisonment. Again, presuming this goes through the legitimate legal process relative to that of a foreign apparatus and all that, let's see what comes of it. Let's see the results. The next thing is that Turkey hits PKK targets in Iraq after 3 of its troops were killed. A PKK attack killed 3 Turkish soldiers in northern Iraq, prompting a retaliatory air attack, Turkey says. It's a chess game, first and foremost, but again, Aliens look at us and go, okay, they're not ready. That simple. Look at this. I mean, just nonsense. I understand the whole thing of being strong and yada yada, but no, that's ego. That's ego on a much higher level. Sorry if I sound like a broken record here, folks, but look at the way these politicians negotiate, especially now as we see with, more and more documentaries and whatnot. It's just like the way you and I would negotiate for a much smaller thing, like buying a car or something, because we're all human. The point I'm trying to make is, again, whether you believe such documentaries or not is not for me to say. What I'm trying to say is that the insight that we've received into the political mindset of things, especially with the desire of politicians to want to become the new celebrities, the new Hollywood, so to speak, and we know that, we see that. That has automatically and inadvertently led to an insight into the way politicians operate. And we always thought that they had some trick up their sleeves. They had some deep connection, something better than us. No, they're no better than us. As a matter of fact, they're probably worse than us. They are worse than the everyday person. So again, take that as you will. The next thing is that Israeli Foreign Minister Lapid visited Egypt to boost ties. Israeli Foreign Minister Yair Lapid has met with Egypt's president and foreign minister for talks that reflect building bilateral ties. Okay. Again, good to see. I can't help but think, again, there's some type of Mossad incursion there, but, take that as you will. The next thing is that U.S. and Israel plan to discuss drills for Iran worst-case scenario. According to a report, as diplomacy with Iran stutters, U.S. officials tell Reuters that American and Israeli defense chiefs will discuss preparations for a worst-case scenario. Let's just hope Biden's not in on those meetings, because he would probably muck it all up, because he can't even read. He can't even open his eyes. I'm not even trying to criticize the guy. It's true. Look at the footage. The next thing is that Kenyan opposition leader Odinga has announced a fifth bid for president. Odinga says he is committed to building, quote, building a democratic and progressive Kenya, quote, as a battle for Kenyatta's successor heats up. Assuming the process is fair and legitimate, again, so be it. Absolutely. The next thing is that more than 30,000 flee to Chad to escape violence in Cameroon, according to the United Nations. More than 20 killed as farmers, fishermen, and herders fight over access to water resources, the UN Refugee Agency says. This is what I mean by global chess games. This is what happens. You have people like this that suffer in this regard, and there's nothing that could be done about it except for those at the top who have the ability to do something, and they don't. Which is why, again, I hope in the grander scale of things relative to the extraterrestrial agenda and all of that, those things will change. The next thing is that jailbreak epidemic hits Nigeria's overcrowded prisons. More than 7,000 people have escaped from several prisons since 2010, with 8 jailbreaks taking place in the last 14 months alone. Yeah, I know, because of COVID and, the protests and the unrest for many different reasons and whatnot, but I wanted to report this story to you folks just to give you an idea of when the mainstream media doesn't have much to report on with respects to this area of the world, so to speak, or at least with respects to, a country like, in this case, Nigeria. What do? They pull up a stat like this, I'm not saying manipulate the data, but they coerce the data to suit a particular headline for the day in order to get clicks. This is what I would take this as. The next thing is that Pakistani Taliban ends ceasefire, future of peace talks uncertain. The Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan group unilaterally announced an end to a month-long ceasefire with the Pakistani government. Again, it's that globalistic versus nationalistic perspective. Is that even our problem? And I really mean that. The next thing is that Indian minister says helicopter lost contact minutes before crash. If you folks remember, 2 days ago I reported on this as well. Defense minister tells parliament the helicopter carrying defense chief lost contact with air traffic control 7 minutes before it was supposed to land. Could this be some, psychological, DEW, direct energy weapon operation? It's possible. Hard to say, but possible. And if it is, then we'll never find the evidence. Will not come to light unless it's leaked, and even then you got to question if what I'm going to get at there. The next thing is that this is quite ironic. The Remain in Mexico policy is allegedly exposing migrants to horrific abuses. Under the recently reinstated policy, asylum seekers at the U.S. border are vulnerable to torture, rape, and death. Now, again, I don't know if this recently reinstated policy started under the Trump administration. I don't think so, but don't quote me on that. I say this because I thought Trump was the bad guy. I thought Biden was the one that was going to bring peace and build back better, yada, yada. And you can't say, it's only been 100 days, give me time. No, we're approaching a year now. So, again, take that as you will. The next thing is that Nicaragua has cut diplomatic ties with Taiwan to align with Beijing. Taiwan expresses, quote, great regret at the move, which leaves it having formal ties with only 14 countries. This looks like a proxy move to piss off the U.S., in my opinion. Nicaragua, again, look at how much crap the U.S. has done to and on Nicaraguan soil. I'm not saying that they should side with Beijing, China, and the CCP, but I don't blame them. Nicaragua's been stepped all over for years, whether it was Iran-Contra, all this kind of stuff. So, I truthfully, I'm really trying to play it down the middle here. I'm not trying to side with the CCP at all. I'm just saying, even if they had aligned with Russia, even if they had aligned with, I don't know, North Korea, whoever, I would have just said, no, I could see why. I don't agree with it, but I could see why. The next thing is that Nobel Peace Prize winners demand protection for journalists. Journalists Maria Ressa of the Philippines and Dmitry Muratov of Russia warned that the world needs independent reporting to counter the power of authoritarian governments. Yeah, just like how Julian Assange is supposed to be, Julian Assange is getting... extradited, to the back to the United States. Speaking of which, takes me to my next point. The UK has ruled that he can be extradited. I don't agree with that whatsoever, and I'm not saying that again. He could have leaked stuff on Republicans, and I still would have said the same thing. Just to be consistent, folks. Again, having to do with journalism exposing the depravity of certain national security states. Even we can say rogue national security states for that matter. So again, it's a very deep discussion, but yeah, it's tough. The next thing is that European Union countries agreed to take in 40,000 Afghan refugees. A group of 15 European Union member states agreed to resettle Afghans, with Germany accepting the bulk of new arrivals, Commissioner says. Again, my perspective is, so be it. If the U.S. or Australia or Israel, they're not happy about this, again, it's all a chess game. It doesn't affect you and I, at least directly or immediately. So again, let's take that with a grain of salt, so to speak. With respects to, again, if we should consider this being our business or not, rather. But again, Afghan refugees, it's up to the people of Germany. I'd love to hear what's going on the ground there with respects to the different perspectives of Germany always taking in all these immigrants. If it's good, then so be it. If not, then hard to say, right? But the next thing is that Biden has spoken to Ukraine's president amid Russia tensions. Biden also briefed NATO allies on talks with Vladimir Putin as efforts to ease tensions with Ukraine continue. What's he gonna do? It's his team. I don't even, not just Biden's team. The whole administration. I don't like it. These are textbook, national security. Continue the state of military-industrial complex of Wall Street. Continue the progression of such corruption at the top. So I don't take any of this seriously. I really don't. People ask me, Dave, what do you think of Secretary of State Antony Blinken and all that? I don't like him. Because they're there to preserve that national security apparatus, that rotten apparatus that is keeping so many of us suppressed globally. So the next thing is that U.S. tightens curbs as Cambodia moves closer into China's embrace. New sanctions, including an arms embargo, imposed amid concern about China's influence and the effects on the wider region. Again, it's a chess game, guys. What else can I say? It's a chess game. Speaking of which, I just wanted to point this out here, this tweet, which is pretty cool. Was the massive air filtration system overhaul at Wuhan Institute of Virology on or before September 19th, 2019 a big throw? I'm learning tainted blood is 50 times more infective than airborne pathogens. Vaping would be a far more direct route to the blood. Seriously, just a general question, investigative journalist. He's asking a question. I don't see what's wrong with that. Speaking of which, the Gillibrand-Rubio Amendment isn't the most significant legislative action on UFOs since the 1960s. It's actually the first time Congress has done so. Again, great, I guess you could say, great correction in this particular individual statement. So the next thing is that, let's take a look over here, is that China is guilty of Uighur genocide in Xinjiang, a tribunal rules. The UK-based unofficial tribunal says the Chinese government's alleged forced birth control of Muslim Uyghurs amounts to genocide. Again, they're all lying. It's all tit for tat. It's all a chess game. So again, yeah, I'm glad that the tribunal took place because we could see some of the people whose families actually suffered from it to be truthful and fair and consistent. That's great to see. It's sad to see it's not an official tribunal because, of course, how are we going to get such CCP individuals if they're in China, right? So, again, and this whole thing of U.S. tightening curbs on Cambodia with the sanctions because Cambodia is moving closer to China's arm, so to speak, or wing, coming under China's wing, or the CCP's wing, rather. I don't want to disrespect the Chinese people. Look, it's a global chess game. Everyone's taking sides now. Things are changing. The paradigm's shifting. Whether for good or for worse, I think it's too early to say. The next thing is that at least 54 people have been killed and scores more injured after the truck they were being transported in crashed in southern Mexico. More than 150 people said to be migrants from Central America were crammed into the truck's trailer when it rolled in the state of Chiapas. Hopefully I didn't butcher that. One resident heard a man implore his badly hurt companion, quote, "Remember what you promised your mother, hold on," end quote. That's just very sad to see that this accident occurred in that regard. I'm not going to rule out an intelligence operation for what we don't know. We may never know. It could be a simple accident. Again, we got to consider all of it. The next thing is that the final thing is that the International Trade Secretary Anne-Marie Trevelyan has warned the US and UK could step up retaliatory measures if punitive tariffs on UK steel exports are not lifted soon. She has been in the US for talks with the Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo. On her return, Ms. Trevelyan said, quote, "We had a very frank conversation. I was very clear that the pressures we are under to use countervailing measures if we can't solve the problem are becoming more acute," she said, end quote. Again, these people, look, to be fair, I'm not one to talk, okay? But these people, the way they use these fancy words, it's, again, I'm not perfect in the way that I say things to people sometimes, but I have to say, these people are put in the position to be blunt and supposedly to be blunt to one another and all that with respects to global negotiations. Why are they? Yeah, this whole thing's it's a joke and it's a mess and yeah. So again, it's all, truthfully, when we bring it right down to it, I think human ego in the soul. So with that being said, folks, didn't really mean to end this on an esoteric note, so to speak, but we have a public episode coming out. The members have probably already seen it, early access. We put out 3 or 4 episodes for the members just yesterday. Members only content. I think it adds up to a total of anywhere between 6 to 8 hours worth of content, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere around that. But and of course more coming this weekend. So without further ado, folks, we'll catch all of you either on the member side or on the public side or both very, very soon. Cheers.